Hi, welcome to Lord Howe Central School. I'm Julian Mostert and I'm the principal here, and we've just been talking to Nathan and Charlotte about the great, fantastic, dynamic science time we had when the transit of Venus occurred here on the island. Well, it actually occurred everywhere, but we were very lucky on the island and at our school to have a special task, a special mission by the Australian National Maritime Museum to create a doco of the transit of Venus on board Howe Island. We'd like to tell you a little bit about it now. Our journey started when we were contacted by the National Maritime Museum to be a part of this project. And I thought, what do we know about the National Maritime Museum? It just so happened we were pretty lucky because we managed to have the director drop in at our school and we learned a little bit more. What do you think of that, Nathan?
Yeah, well, Mr. Mostert, it was really interesting because I didn't know much about the National Maritime Museum. Teb, one of our students at Lord Howe Central School, got to even interview Kevin and learn all about his job at the National Maritime Museum.
Could you please explain what makes being a curator so great?
Being a curator is a real privilege. It's a great opportunity to learn about Australia's history. I've been a curator of immigration, a curator of US-Australian history, a curator of economic history, and lastly a curator of information technology. And in all of those jobs, I was really focused upon collecting important objects that help tell various historical stories about Australia and the world. And in doing that, I've also been able to travel all around Australia, including here in Lord Howe, to find out about the history and piece together new stories that museums do so well.
So it was great to learn more about the museum. One of the things we really didn't understand was how the HMB Endeavour was part of the museum itself as well. The Endeavour is a replica of the original ship, and there were some raffles or lotteries or offers for people to take part of the journey out to Lord Howe Island on the Endeavour to see the action for itself. We were fortunate enough to be able to see and hear firsthand the tale from one of the sailors who was actually on the Endeavour. Charlotte, tell us more about it.
Well, I'm sure it was disappointing for Ashley, as he fell ill and he had to get evacuated off the boat. But luckily it worked out for us because Kia, one of the students here, got to interview him.
How was the actual journey out here?
Well, Kia, I guess the best word to describe it would be exciting. It was a big swell and the ship was often leaning 45 degrees one way and 45 degrees another way. We had a great cook who cooked the food in the galley, which is a ship's kitchen, and we all went down below to eat together. And yes, I must admit it was difficult to keep it down at times. It was great food, but when you're trying to eat with the boat doing this and this, sometimes for some people you have to go up on deck and you might have been a bit sick. Besides all the great information we got from the Maritime Museum, we were also privy to some other widely respected experts. Alex was from the Australian National University and he's a historian, and his specialty is certainly on early exploration, especially on using it across the seas, the history of the seas. And we all certainly learn a lot. Tell us a bit about that, Nathan.
Alex is from the Australian National University and he told us a bit about the transit and its significance with the Endeavour. And Charlotte was lucky enough to interview him at our own museum and just fill in the gaps about the transit and the Endeavour.
So when was the first ever recording of the transit of Venus?
The first ever observation was 1639.
So how important do you think in Australia's history is the transit of Venus?
I think that it's possible that without the transit, another British voyage of exploration would have ended up mapping the east coast of Australia and claiming it for the Crown.
And the HMB Endeavour was certainly a source of great concern for the time that they were out here. The seas were fairly mountainous, and the winds were pretty much horrific. And so while we were all safe and warm on land, we certainly felt for the people who were out on the ship itself. We'd hoped to interview the Captain Ross of the Endeavour ourselves in person. However, due to nature calling, he had to fill in the gaps for us via the telephone. Charlotte, you went through that interview. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, Mr. Mostert, I was really nervous on the day because I even called the Endeavour. Well, it was strange to interview such an important person like Captain Ross over the phone, but it seemed to turn out okay. So here's how it went. So, Captain Ross, how long have you been the captain of the Endeavour?
It's been 7 years now.
Is this your first voyage to Lord Howe Island?
It is quite a sight by sea, seeing the island.
What do you think would be the best part about your job?
The people we have on board the ship, we have voyage crew who sign on to sail the ship, and they're classed as crew, voyage crew. So we teach them how to sail an 18th century Whitby collier. And so we have to teach these people how to sail, and I have lectures during the ship, during voyage as well. So I teach them a little bit about early maritime navigation, the historical aspects of it. But when they get off the ship, they really have a good insight of what the cook and his sailors had to endure in that 3-year voyage.
Did you ever get worried when the weather started getting really rough and choppy?
I knew that low was developing, so I really had to make sure that the ship was in the best possible condition. One of the immortal words that Cook put down in his logbook as he's voyaged around the world in the original Endeavour was "No sea can harm her." So she is a safe ship. She weathered the storm fine, but the main concern was making sure that all voyage crew were.
How do you moor such a big ship around Lord Howe Island?
Of course, the lagoon's too shallow for us to arrive there, so we had to anchor off. And because we use traditional anchors and traditional anchoring procedures, there's a lot of care involved with that. We have natural fibre cable which is attached to anchor, so bottom boats now have chain where we've got natural rope. But knowing that the storm was going to come, there was no way that I could anchor there. The best place to ship in those sort of conditions is weathering a storm out to sea. It wasn't suitable because of the heavy swells and the wind that we couldn't anchor, and unfortunately we couldn't get our voyage crew off to shore as well. A lot of limitations on this particular vessel because she's so authentic. This ship was based on the original drawings, and we utilised a lot of the traditional skills and practices, and the anchors are part of that as well.
Well, thank you, Captain Ross, for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks very much.
Now, if we weren't feeling already special enough having had the National Maritime Museum and the Australian National University in our school midst, suddenly Carlos from the Sydney Observatory came along and he took it to a whole other level. Now, tell us a bit about Carlos.
Yes, well, when Carlos came to our school, Mr. Mostert, he had the kids, all of them, from K2 to up to year 11, so engaged that they were practically eating out of the palm of his hand.
Now, have we seen an image of the solar system? Do we know how the solar system works? Yes, Rudy.
Yeah.
Yes, how does it work? How does it look like?
The solar system, there's a bunch of planets that go around the sun,
Right.
orbiting the sun.
That's
And
right.
With each planet, it takes a different time to go all the way around the sun.
Very good.
And sometimes, when 2 planets line up, or maybe 3 or 4 of them, all of them, there's a transit that you can see.
That's a great explanation. There was another transit some time ago that was observed from here. Do you remember when that was? Yeah.
2004.
Very good.
While it was engaging at school for all of us, it was really interesting up at the Met site when you saw his instruments and how he really worked.
An adaptation from a classical method of projecting instead of observing. This is one of the safe ways to see the transit of Venus. So this is a homemade version, which is a great example of how much you can do with a little imagination. And we have a screen where we're projecting the sun and with a lot of detail. So you can see not only the planet Venus transiting, you can see sunspots. Today there's a lot of sun activity. you can see these little sunspots. What those are is they're convective cells, a little bit like when you boil a soup. You have these big chunks of hot soup going up to the surface and moving around. Now, that's the way the surface of the sun is. But in the case of the sunspots, these things go up while traveling through a magnetic field line. That makes them go up while going around this field line. So by the time they get to the surface, they are a bit colder and they don't produce the same amount of light than the area around them. So what you see, the black dots are colder parts of the sun, and then obviously the planet Venus transiting.
Well, Carlos is a very inspiring guy, and it was my highlight of the day when I got to interview him about the transit of Venus. Is this your first active viewing of the transit of Venus?
Well, this is the first time I actually been able to see the transit of Venus. As you know, the previous one, it was in 2004, and before that we had the one in 1882, which was very popular here. I was not alive in 1882 despite my grey hairs, but in the 2004 I was a student in England, and unfortunately I was not available for that one. So when we had this transit, I was very keen on seeing it because I knew that I would not have a chance again. I'm very happy that I did.
How will the data from the observations you collect be used?
The data we are collecting here is in the spirit of recreating the old history of data collection about this event. So we are not probably going to discover anything new, but we are going to check that the way they collected data was useful to find the distance between the Earth and the Sun, which was the goal in history. So we are timing 4 particular events called the contacts, and we are comparing that timing with the timing from different parts of the world, and with that we're going to try to work out the distance between the Earth and the Sun.
What is your favourite astronomical event that you viewed?
I have to say, in the aftermath of the transit of Venus, this observation has been my favorite one.
Well, as you can see, there were many highlights here and many experts who came to the school to help us out. However, a school involves kids, and they're the most important part. So let's hear about the transit of Venus from the kids' point of view. Charlotte.
Well, Mr. Moster, all the kids did really have a good time, and after seeing the website, the Stellarium, using the solar scopes and the safety glasses, everyone really did end up having a really great time and enjoying it. But don't just trust me on how good the transit of Venus was. Let's hear it from some of the other kids.
My favourite part of today was looking through the solar scope and seeing Venus.
My favourite part of today was when we looked through the glasses and we saw the transit of Venus.
I can see it.
I remember it's way further back, but now it's moved.
I see the redness of the sun.
My favourite part of today was going up Transit Hill.
Track.
Well, Mr. Moster, you always like having the last word, so what did you think of it?
Oh, thanks for asking, Charlotte. The transit of Venus experience for our school was just sensational. It was maths, it was science, it was art, it was, you name it, history, living it in the real world. And we all immersed ourselves in the experience and really feel like we've all learned something, actually, even me. Thanks for having us, and hopefully you've learned something as well.